given 2 speeches. Are you ready for 2 long speeches? What I wanted to do just before I begin talking about American-Israeli relations, say a word about to the media. We received information this morning that we won the Democrats abroad primary with, I believe, 69% of the vote. What that means is that we pick up over Secretary Clinton 5 more delegates, which I would mention to the media is about the same number of delegates that she gained over us in Illinois and Missouri. So sometimes I think we exaggerate. What we're fighting for is delegates, not states.
Yes.
And Democrats abroad gave us over her the same votes as she won over us in 2 tight races in Illinois and in Missouri. What I wanted to do today is put this thing down. I was invited along with other presidential candidates to be at the APAC conference in Washington, but obviously I could not make it because we are here. But I did want to, the issues that APAC is dealing with are very important issues, and I wanted to kind of give the same speech here as I would have given if we were at that conference. And let me begin by saying that I think I am probably the only candidate for president who has personal ties with Israel. I spent a number of months there when I was a young man on a kibbutz, so I know a little bit about Israel. Clearly, America, the United States, and Israel are united by historical ties. We are united by culture. We are united by our values, including a deep commitment to democratic principles, civil rights, and the rule of law. Israel is one of America's closest allies, and we as a nation are committed not just to guaranteeing Israel's survival, but also to make sure that its people have the right to live in peace and security. To my mind, as friends, long-term friends with Israel, we are obligated to speak the truth as we see it. And that is what real friendship demands, especially in difficult times. Our disagreements will come and go, and we must weather them constructively. But it is important among friends to be honest and truthful about differences that we may have. America and Israel have faced great challenges together. We have supported each other, and we will continue to do just that as we face a very daunting challenge, and that is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I am here to tell the American people that if elected president, I will work tirelessly to advance the cause of peace as a partner and as a friend to Israel. But to be successful, we have also got to be a friend not only to Israel, but to the Palestinian people. Where in Gaza, unemployment today is 44%, and we have there a poverty rate which is almost as high. So when we talk about Israel and Palestinian areas, it is important to understand that today there is a whole lot of suffering among Palestinians, and that cannot be ignored. You can't have good policy that results in peace if you ignore one side. The road towards peace will be difficult. Wonderful people, well-intentioned people have tried decade after decade to achieve that, and it will not be easy. And I cannot tell you exactly how it will look. I do not believe that anyone can, but I firmly believe that the only prospect for peace is the successful negotiation of a 2-state solution. The first step in that road ahead is to set the stage for resuming the peace process through direct negotiations. Progress is never made unless people are prepared to sit down and talk to each other. This is no small thing. It means building confidence on both sides, offering some signs of good faith, and then proceeding to talks when conditions permit them to be constructive. Again, this is not easy, but that is the direction in which we've got to go. This will require compromises on both sides, but I believe it can be done. I believe that Israel, the Palestinians, and the international community can, must, and will rise to the occasion and do what needs to be done to achieve a lasting peace in a region of the world that has seen so much war, so much conflict, and so much suffering. Peace will require the unconditional recognition by all people, of Israel's right to exist. It will require an end to attacks of all kinds against Israel. Peace will require that organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah renounce their efforts to undermine the security of Israel. It will require the entire world to recognize Israel. Peace has to mean security for every Israeli from violence and terrorism. But peace also means security for every Palestinian. It means achieving self-determination, civil rights, and economic well-being for the Palestinian people. Peace will mean ending what amounts to the occupation of Palestinian territory, establishing mutually agreed upon borders, and pulling back settlements in the West Bank, just as Israel did in Gaza, once considered an unthinkable move on Israel's part. And that is why I join much of the international community, including the U.S. State Department and the European Union, in voicing my concern that Israel's recent expropriation of an additional 579 acres of land in the West Bank undermines the peace process and ultimately Israeli security as well. It is absurd for elements within the Netanyahu government to suggest that building more settlements in the West Bank is the appropriate response to the most recent violence. It is also not acceptable that the Netanyahu government decided to withhold hundreds of millions of shekels in tax revenue from the Palestinians, which it is supposed to collect on their behalf. But by the same token, it is also unacceptable for President Abbas to call for the abrogation of the Oslo Agreement when the goal should be the ending of violence. Peace will also mean ending the economic blockade of Gaza, and it will mean a sustainable and equitable distribution of precious water resources so that Israel and Palestine can both thrive as neighbors. Right now, Israel controls about 80% of the water reserves in the West Bank. Inadequate water supply has contributed to the degradation and desertification of Palestinian land. A lasting peace will have to recognize Palestinians are entitled to control their own lives, and there is nothing human life needs more than water. Peace will require strict adherence by both sides to the tenets of international humanitarian law. This includes Israeli ending disproportionate responses to being attacked, even though any attack on Israel is unacceptable. We recently saw a dramatic example of just how important this concept is. In 2014, the decades-old conflict escalated once more as Israel launched a major military campaign against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli offensive came after weeks of indiscriminate rocket fire into its territory and the kidnapping of Israeli citizens. Of course, I strongly object to Hamas's long-held position that Israel does not have a right to exist. That is unacceptable. And of course, I strongly condemn indiscriminate rocket fire by Hamas into Israeli territory and Hamas's use of civilian neighborhoods to launch those attacks. I condemn the fact that Hamas diverted funds and materials for much-needed construction projects designed to improve the quality of life of the Palestinian people, and instead use those funds to construct a network of tunnels for military purposes. However, let me also be very clear. I, along with many supporters of Israel, spoke out strongly against the Israeli counterattacks that killed nearly 1,500 civilians and wounded thousands more. I condemn the bombing of hospitals, schools, and refugee camps. Today, Gaza is still largely in ruins. The international community must come together to help Gaza recover. That doesn't mean rebuilding factories that produce bombs and missiles, but it does mean rebuilding schools, homes, and hospitals that are vital to the future of the Palestinian people.
Yes.
These are difficult subjects. They are hard to talk about for many Americans and for Israelis. I recognize that. But it is clear to me that the path toward peace will require tapping into our shared humanity to make hard but just decisions. Nobody can tell when peace will be achieved between Israel and the Palestinians. No one knows the exact order that compromises will have to be made to reach a viable two-state solution. But as we undertake that work together, the United States will continue its unwavering commitment to the safety of Israeli citizens and the country of Israel. Now let me just say a word about an overall agenda for the Middle East. Of course, beyond the Palestinian question, Israel finds itself in the midst of a region in severe upheaval. ISIS threatens the security of the entire region and beyond, including our own countries and our allies. Secretary of State John Kerry was right to say that ISIS is committing genocide, and there is no doubt in my mind that the United States must continue to participate in an international coalition to destroy this barbaric organization. Obviously, much needs to be done. So far, our effort has made some important progress, as airstrikes have degraded ISIS's military capacity, and the group has lost more than 20% of its territory in the past year. So we are making some progress. But we are entering a difficult period in the campaign against this barbaric organization. The government in Baghdad has yet to achieve a sustainable political order that unites Iraq's various ethnic and sectarian factions, which has limited its ability to sustain military victories against ISIS. Unless there is a united government, it's going to be hard to be effective in destroying ISIS. More inclusive, stable governance in Iraq will be vital to inflict a lasting defeat on ISIS. Otherwise, ISIS could regain its influence, or another similar organization may spring up in its place. In Syria, the challenges are even more difficult and more complicated. The fractured nature of the civil war there has often diluted the fight against ISIS, exemplified by the Russian airstrikes that prioritized hitting anti-Assad fighters rather than ISIS. And just like in Iraq, ISIS cannot be defeated until the groups that take territory from ISIS can responsibly govern the areas they take back. Ultimately, this will require a political framework for all of Syria. The U.S. must also play a greater role disrupting the financing of ISIS. and efforts on the internet to turn disaffected youth into a new generation of terrorists. While the U.S. has an important role, very important role to play in defeating ISIS, that struggle must be led by the Muslim countries themselves on the ground. I agree with King Abdullah of Jordan, who a number of months ago made it clear that what is going on there right now is nothing less than a battle for the soul of Islam, and the only people who will effectively destroy ISIS there will be Muslim troops on the ground. So what we need is a coalition of those countries. Now, I am not suggesting that Saudi Arabia or any other state in the region invade other countries, nor unilaterally intervene in conflicts driven in part by sectarian tensions. What I am saying is that the major powers in that region, especially the Gulf states, have to take greater responsibility for the future of the Middle East and the defeat of ISIS. What I am saying is that countries like Qatar, which intends to spend up to $200 billion to host the 2022 World Cup, Qatar, which per capita is the wealthiest country in the world, Qatar can do much more to contribute to the fight against ISIS. If they are prepared to spend $200 billion for a soccer tournament, then they have got to spend a lot more in the fight against a barbaric organization. Now, what I am also saying is that other countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia has the fourth largest defense budget in the world. People don't know that. Fourth largest defense budget in the world. And Saudi Arabia has got to dedicate itself more fully to the destruction of ISIS instead of other military adventures like the one it is pursuing right now in Yemen. And keep in mind that while ISIS is obviously a very dangerous and formidable enemy, ISIS has only about 30,000 fighters on the ground. So when we ask the nations in the region to stand up, nations in the region which have millions of men and women under arms, we know it is surely within their capability to destroy ISIS. Now, the United States has every right in the world to insist on these points. Remember, I want everybody to remember that not so many years ago, it was the United States and our troops that reinstalled the royal family in Kuwait after Saddam Hussein's invasion in 1990. We put these people back on the throne. Now they have the obligation to work with us and other countries to destroy ISIS. Yeah.